So this video is going to show you how to start shading. So the next step, once your drawing is complete, notice not only do I have very specific features and I have the outline for my hair, contour lines around some of the shadows and highlights, because that is going to help me in this next step, and also help me place things so they're the correct location and that they're the correct proportion. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start shading. So ultimately, when you are done shading, we actually shouldn't see any of these outlines. Instead, we are going to see edges where a dark area meets a light area. So what I recommend doing is I recommend starting where your darkest areas are. Now, I am not going to fill it in solid, dark, or black on my first layer. I am going to just start there, building up my layers. Then I branch out to the lighter values. Now, if you want to approach it the opposite way, you certainly can. If you want to start with the very lightest values, you can. Realize on my photograph here, there are very few pure white spaces. So what I find helpful for this is a value finder, and a value finder helps me get the different, or helps me place the different values or figure out what values what. So this is a value finder, and if you're in the class, you can certainly use one. However, if you're at home, you can make one yourself. What would I do to make one myself at home? I would just simply take a value scale that I already have done from the practices. So if I go back here, I can find my graphite practice, and I can use this right here. So I can make another one, or I can just cut that one out. So I'm actually going to take this one. This is a duplicate one that I already have, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And what this helps me do is find and identify different values on my printout. If you are working from your computer, I would actually recommend that you change your photograph to be a black and white photograph, because that's going to help you find the values that you need. So I can either use one of these that I have in the class, or I can take my own. If you don't want to cut out from the page that you have done your practice on, you can just make a new one. So how am I going to use this? Well, here's my photograph, and I am going to use this to help me identify different values. So like I said, there's very few light white values on here. So here's a light value, and I can see that in the middle of my forehead, it depends on where I'm at, that's like a number 7. So once I shade that area on my drawing, then I'm going to double check to see if that's a 7. So this can come in a little bit later, and I'll show you how to do that with this too. So I actually like to start with the eyes, and the eyes I will find usually the darkest value possible, which is usually in that pupil. Now I am starting with just an HB pencil. I think you can start with your 2B pencil. If you are starting with your very, very light values, you might start with your H pencil. So something that I'm looking at in the eyes is, where are the darker values? I'm using smooth pencil tip shading. You can use other techniques if you would like, but don't smudge. Please don't smudge. Now, as I am drawing and shading the eye, I guess I'm shading it now, what I'm looking for is, look at right in the corner there of my eye, that is a very dark value. Because the eye is a curved surface, there is a darker value where it curves away from the viewer. And even what I would consider the white of the eye has like a light value on it. So it is like there. Actually, even that light, not the very light. So it's not white, even though we call it the white of the eye. Another area I would look at right here where your upper eyelid covers your eyeball, there's a little bit of a shadow. So I am just roughly placing values or shadows. This is my darkest one around here. Now, something that people get really afraid of is the larger areas of like the cheek and the nose and the chin. So something like the eyes and the lips are fairly easy to shade. But once we get into these broader areas, people get confused. So that's why I'm using this photo reference. I'm not guessing at where I see values. I am looking at them and placing them according to what I see. So I had already drawn this here to kind of represent the shadow I have here. If you've not already figured out, drawing a portrait, a realistic likeness, is a very long process. It's something you need to be patient and gentle with yourself. So I am working really, really lightly. But honestly, these are pretty dark values. I'm not pressing very hard. What you might see, I don't know if you can see this right now, is that I have an indent in my paper. And I tried to avoid that, but it didn't happen. So when I get to shading that area, I am going to put my pencil up on the tip and try to get into there. So a larger, broader area like the cheek, I might see how far back I'm holding my pencil. I know it's a dark value, but I am really starting very lightly. And then that means later on when I need, if I need to make corrections, I can erase anywhere that I went too dark. So really dark next up to here. Now I understand when you're shading a face, and especially your own portrait, that you don't want to add too many harsh dark values. So if you want to go a little lighter than what your photo reference shows you, I certainly understand that. But just pay attention to what's there. Again, I'm not guessing. I'm using my photo reference. So your cheek and part of your chin has some very subtle changes. So you'll want to pay attention to that as you shade. The more specific you can be with your shadows, the more three-dimensional it's actually going to look. So working up here, really very, very light, getting into a little bit of the detail. So I still don't have eyelashes on my drawing yet. I don't have the hair in my eyebrows. I'm still saving that almost to the end. And the other thing I want you to be open to is that as you are drawing, or shading in this case, one of your lines from before you might find out is not in the correct location. So you still have to, at this stage, even though you put a lot into it, be open to the idea that you can still make improvements. So as I'm shading in the eye, I'm seeing that I think that needs to be raised up a little bit. See how there's almost this ridge around there that's lighter and then it gets darker? So I'm paying attention to those subtle. Now again, I said the lines are going to fade away. So they are starting to become edges where a dark value meets a lighter value. And especially younger artists are not going to want to see a lot of lines on the face because it's going to make you like age you, make you look a lot older. So I think you can do most of the shading on your face with your H pencil or your 2B pencil. So as I take maybe a line, a contour line that I had, I am filling in a value next to it because the reason that I saw an edge there is because there's a value change. So this looks like it could be a line, but it's actually not a line. It's just a dark value in there. It's kind of like a crease. So slowly building up, making changes still, knowing that I might not have everything exactly where it needs to be. I can still move and adjust. So that's how I get started. And then hopefully the next step is you finishing. One thing I'd like to say about the hair, we really haven't talked about the hair a lot. The hair, what you're going to do is you're going to look for these chunks of light and dark, and you are going to draw those in first. So when it is a dark chunk and you shade it in very dark, there's not going to be detail in there. It's dark. I can't see the individual strands of hair. So you can feel free to shade that in pretty solid. You can give the impression of a few strands, but it's going to be in the lighter areas that you are going to imply the hair. So imply the direction. I'm not going to draw in spaghetti hair everywhere. So there's a dark chunk. I'm going to shade that in darker. And then just every once in a while, I'm in the lighter areas, I am going to give the feeling of the length and the direction, or show the feeling of the length and direction of my hair.